Iran's central province of Isfahan has been hit by a wave of US and Israeli attacks. One strike hit a factory, killing at least 15 workers. The Iranian capital has also been bombed. Iran launched another wave of missile strikes on Tel Aviv. Most were intercepted, but falling shrapnel injured at least 3 people. There were also reports of damage in several communities in central Israel. US President Donald Trump has called on allies to send warships to protect shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. He says many countries are sending help, but hasn't said which ones. Iran has been disrupting traffic in this vital trade route for global energy supplies. Samir Puri is a visiting lecturer in war studies at King's College in London. He joins us live from London now. Good to have you with us. So we're seeing a heavy, intense US and Israeli shelling on Isfahan in particular. That's an industrial, considered one of the industrial heartlands of Iran. What does that tell us about the US strategy? Is it simply trying to break down the infrastructure of a state at this point?
Well, I think it tells us that the US doesn't really have a strategy other than maximum destruction of Iran's industrial and military capabilities. And I think what's happening is that while that is probably a strategic necessity for Israel as it sees it, it's very hard to see how the US emerges from even another week to 3 weeks of pummeling the Iranian industrial capacity with a suitable outcome. And that's the thing about strategy. It's not just about the tactics that are used. It's not just about the targets that are used. It's about the political endgame, the political outcome that arises from this. But make no mistake, there will be much more damage suffered by Iran's industrial and military capabilities in the meantime.
Did the US count on a popular uprising that hasn't materialized, or was there just a lack of clarity on what the strategic goals were?
You know, I never thought that we would see an attack on another country that makes Russia's invasion of Ukraine look well planned by comparison, if I'm being very honest with you. Remember Mar-a-Lago's speech of the 28th of February that Trump delivered when he launched this attack on Iran? He talked about the Iranian people rising up. He used quite emotive language at the end of February, saying this will be your only chance, perhaps, for generations to the Iranian people. And what clearly appears to have happened is Trump has seen the protests that were violently suppressed, brutally suppressed over the last few months, and drawn some very naive, I think, connections as to what bombing from the air could actually do to allow those protesters to resume their assault on the regime domestically. But that's not happened. And I think what we've subsequently seen is the US making it up as it goes along in terms of trying to attach different narratives to the military offense that they're conducting. But I go back to that original point. Maximum destruction over the course of 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks is actually a pretty good outcome for the way Benjamin Netanyahu sees what Israel needs to do in the region. It is going to be very problematic for Donald Trump because the US is the biggest underwriter of Gulf state security. And that security, not only for the Gulf states, but the Straits of Hormuz, as we've been hearing, is only going to get worse and worse with a deeply embittered Iranian regime that may actually feel quite vindicated that it emerges from this bloodied but unbowed.
And what does it mean then for the main pillar of security in the region, the United States, that, you know, it ended this war talking about how it needs to destroy the capabilities of what it called a radical, sort of crazy regime, that kind of terminology. And now we have the nuclear armed superpower saying it might bomb again Kharg Island just for fun. What does that do to the image of a reliable, rational security partner?
That's a really good question, because when a superpower, a major power offers security guarantees, it's not just about the hardware and the capabilities, the airplanes, the airstrips, the aerial defense interceptors. It's also about the sort of strategic common sense that comes with it, that this is a responsible actor. And I think certainly within the way the US is presenting this war, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth appears to be taking enormous delight for destruction's sake in terms of the way the US is approaching this. And this is not enhancing of I think, the sense of stability for the sense of the US as a long-term partner, because I don't mean to put words into the mouths of Gulf states, and of course you're sitting in Doha, but the the important thing is, no matter how much of a rivalry there has been with Iran for some of the Arab states, there is also an intense desire for stability. And that, I think, is going to return to being the focus quite soon, is whenever the US has an exit ramp, what is the US going to do to ensure stability, given the fact that it's arguably radicalizing further an already radicalized Iranian theocratic regime, which has apocalyptic visions about its own destiny, its own sort of sense of martyrdom, many of which have been validated. Because, just one last point on this, let's not forget that the Iranians were engaged in negotiations. I heard
Right.
from the Iranian Deputy Foreign Minister Saeed Khatibzadeh last week in India. They were in Geneva in talks, and then the Americans launched this attack. So the Iranians, of course, are going to continue to want to destabilize.
Right. And since you obviously focus on war studies, what has this war so far told us about the state of Iranian preparedness, especially when it comes to their air defense systems and how much they've learned from June? It seems like the Israelis and the Americans have, to a great degree at least, something of a free hand.
Yeah, it's a really important point here. I think in terms of the Iranian military approach, Iran is known for running proxy groups throughout Iraq, throughout Lebanon, throughout Yemen. It's probably now starting to become a bit of a guerrilla actor in its own right, in the defense of its own territory, which is a very worrying prospect, meaning that a lot of its military capability has been debilitated, its air force, its navy being attacked relentlessly, but it will still have the ability to find sort of obscure parts of its own territory, launch those drones and missiles at ships, launch retaliatory strikes, and it's got a vast territory in which it can actually utilize to its advantage to continue to fire missiles and drones that may not cause substantial damage, but will continue to destabilize the region and remain a serious threat to Gulf states, to shipping, and to the US bases.
It's been good talking to you. Samir Puri, thank you so much from King's College London.